Hey, what is going on, guys? I'm Mario and welcome back to another Cinema 4D tutorial. So this time we're going back to Kitbash library video series where we're going to create parts for our Kitbash library, where we're going to reuse those assets in some of our future projects so that we don't have to create them from scratch. And again, I would like to mention why we're creating this. So in my opinion, I think that these small pieces are a very good exercise if you're just starting or beginning with modeling. So this video is going to be very beginner friendly, and I'm going very slow and I'm doing right clicks on basically everything that I do. So if you're a bit advanced user, this could be a bit annoying for you, so I'm really sorry about that. But if you're a beginner, I hope that this should be very helpful info here. So again, this is something very simple we're gonna try to do and try to recreate. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, so let's begin by adding a cylinder to the scene. And a few things about cylinders that I would like to mention just in case you're not aware of that. So first being, let's talk about rotational segments. If I go here to display and select coarse shading with lines, and that will actually show me all the edges that are currently running through the cylinder. And you also have isoparms, but we're going to talk about that when we decide to subdivide the object. So let's just go to wireframe for now. So basically, if I turn the cylinder around these axes so that it's oriented like that, so you will notice a few things. So one being that we have this edge flow around one axis and a second edge flow going around this axis. So if I set this to 20, you will see maybe better what I'm talking about. So why is this important? So for example, if you're creating details on your cylinder and let's say you need to repeat those details, you might want to work only on 1/4 of all the cylinders. So basically you work in this area and then you can make a symmetry along other areas. So for example, if I would select 21 as my rotational segment, I would lose, let's say, this edge right here. If I would set to 22, even though that it's an even number, I'm still losing that edge. So what I would suggest is that you keep your edge flow in this axis. So it's just going to be easier later on when you're doing any details. So basically you can select these two polygons and extrude, or these 4, and basically do not have to worry about your objects not being in symmetry. So if we are in rotational segments number 20, if I set it to 24, we'll maintain the same. So basically, if you change it up in intervals of 4, you will always have these edges like that. So what I'm gonna do here, I might put this to 24 for the purpose of this tutorial. Now, second thing about the cylinder. So now that we decide that we are ready to make this object editable and start creating something, I will go here and make this object editable. And also, if you notice, if I hover it, the shortcut for that will be C. So you can either hit C or simply this button right here. So now this will create our editable object, which means that we can now access points, edges, and polygons. And like I mentioned before, if I now select the whole object, and if I go to one of the axes, I can actually select 4 of these, let's say, polygons, and be sure that I'm actually in the right edge flow. But before we do any adjustments to the cylinder, I just want to mention one other thing. So if you select this top loop right here, and if you try to, let's say, modify the topology here, or actually modify the object, you'll notice that the top is not connected. So in order to connect that, what we can do is select everything and go to right click and then to optimize. And basically that what we'll do is connect this caps to the rest of the model, to the rest of the object. So that's just a quick note in case you missed that. So let's now try and do a few modifications to to this, and let's try to create something out of that. So in order to, let's say, create another cylinder that it's going in the middle, we can do a copy of that, and we can do that a couple ways. So first one being going into the object manager, simply control and paste, control copy and paste. Second thing what we can do is, while holding control command, just drag and drop the cylinder outwards, and then we will have another copy which we can just scale. Or what we can do is, when this is selected, and just make sure that our also model is selected, what we can go is into the move tool, and again hold control or command, and while this little icon is active, we can then push it outwards or in any axis actually that we wish, and that will create a copy for us right here in the viewport. So what I prefer to do is just copy it directly in the viewport. It's the fastest way, just holding command and control, just push it outwards, and then what we can do, go into our scale tool and just scale it down a bit, and while holding this little axis gizmo right here, we can increase the scale. And again, I will push this to move and move it down. And again, here I'm gonna try not to use as many hotkeys, but what I would definitely recommend is that you learn at least these three hotkeys at the very beginning. So move hotkey is E. If you hover, you will see that scale has a T hotkey, and rotate is R. So basically these three will be very helpful even at the very beginning. So let's just scale this up and scale it down a bit, and maybe something like that. And let's use move tool and maybe push this a bit down. So let's say something like that. Okay, so let's go to our first cylinder and let's do a few adjustments. So adjustments that I would like to do, it will just, again, just playing with the shape, and let's go and add few more supportive edges right here in the middle. So far we have none, and if we subdivide that will become a problem. So what I mean by that, and let me just actually I can just use one. So if I decide to subdivide this geometry without any supportive edges, it will collapse on its own. So if I hold Alt key and hover over subdivision surface, and my cylinder is selected, so Alt key hold and simply click, it will put it as a parent of my cylinder. So a few things here. First, you might notice that the object totally collapsed. Second, I would like to mention that now we can actually move from Wireframe to Isoparms. And what actually that does, if you notice with Q, I'm now toggling subdivision on and off. You'll notice that Isoparms actually show us the editable edges. So meaning that if I would select the points or edges, you'll see that they are the ones who actually we can edit, while Wireframe will show us the full subdivision surface geometry. So what we want to do here is keep it to Isoparms just to make it a bit more simple. So the reason why we need to add the edges is that we need to maintain the geometry here, so it's not collapsing, meaning that I would like to maintain this shape and not keep this one. So to do that, we can go to right click and then choose loop path cut and simply add edges close to the areas that we want to sharpen. So meaning this, let me just show real quick. So meaning that these two edges needs to stay sharp. So close to those edges, we need to add new edges. So let's just right click and go to loop path cut. And I'm gonna add one edge here. So the closer two edges are together, the sharper the edge becomes. So if they're really close, the edge will be really sharp. And if they're a bit set apart, it's gonna be less sharp. And to see that even better, we can go to subdivision surface and just increase the number of subdivision to, let's say, something like 3. And you might see the difference. Maybe not so much yet. If we add a bit more subdivisions here, you might see it a bit better. So let's do the same thing here. So let's add really close. So like that. And let's come here and just push it a bit apart. So if I now hit Q and check how it looks when subdivided, and let's go back to display chord shading, you will see that this corner is fairly sharp while this corner is more of a smoother. So basically what you need to do here is avoid very sharp corners like that, because when you look them from far, you will basically see none of that beveling. While if you look this from far, you will clearly see that it has nice bevel edge. So when you put materials and lights on, this is going to be shown very nicely, while this is not. So this is something just to think about. And let's go just a few steps back. So what I want to do here, and a bit more, is just add a few new edges that are fairly simple, like that, and that they have a nice spacing. So here as well. So this covers spacing here. Now we need spacing here as well. So we need to have edge in this area as well. So basically we need to have supportive edge around all of the main edges. So let's say that all this now that is selected, this is our main edge, and we need to create supportive edges on every side. So basically we need one edge here, and we need one edge here, like that. So now when we subdivide with Q hotkey and check our model, it's gonna look like that. And again, I'll just bring back those 3 subdivisions, and there we are. So it's looking much nicer. And so let's continue working on this cylinder. And okay, so what we can do here is add a few more supportive edges here in the middle. So let's just increase the number of subdivisions to, let's say, something like that. So just that we have more geometry to work with, meaning that if I would let's say wanted to edit these 2 polygons, I can only push them outwards. And if I even decide to, let's say, extrude inner and maybe push them in, if I subdivide, you will notice that again the geometry doesn't have enough space to breathe, or we don't have enough geometry to work with. That's why we would like to introduce a bit more cuts right here, like that. So now that allows us to select a bit more of the polygons and gives us a bit more breathing room to do something different. And again, we now have, if I select this loop here and this loop here, basically they are giving the supportive edges to maintain this shape. So I hope that makes sense. So let's continue editing this. And what I can do here, so again, just to mention, let's select all, and just to mention about what I talked in the very beginning, why we need this edge flow here and this edge flow here. So as you can notice, it's fairly evenly spread. So basically that we can select, let's say, areas like this, and let's say we can then extrude this area outwards. And if we decide to work on the symmetry, we now have even number of polygons on each side. So actually let's go with this shape. And what we can do here is let's go to right click. And now as for selecting, I'm using hotkeys. So when I'm in edge mode, I'm selecting all of the edge loops. So to find that function, you simply need to go to V, select, and then you have it in loop selection. So again, loop selection, ring selection, and path selection, these 3 will be most commonly used. So it's V, select, and then it's found under loop selection. And it works both with edges, works also with points, and also works with polygons. Now polygons, it works the same thing as you would select ring selection, but soon you move to edges, you will see that you will have a different flow. So let's go and select this edge right here. And what I would like to do is make a small incision right in the middle. So to do that, what I'm going to do is simply right click and go to bevel. And I can bevel this edge like that. But also what I would like to have is a bit more subdivision in between. So instead of now going here, right click to loop cut and adding it like this, what I can do is set that immediately in the actual bevel function. So let's go to bevel and I'll select subdivisions to 2, and that will give me more edges to work with. And again, now I can go to my loop selection and select what I want to say is polygons. And then I can select this loop right here. And what I like to do is make an excision along these lines. So what I'm going to do is right click and extrude that inwards. So basically I have something like that. And when I subdivide, and if I press model button, I will get something like this. So this needs some work. Basically, for now, it looks way too smoothed out. So what we need to do is we need to add a bit more edges just to maintain that sharpness where we want to have it. So meaning that we would like to have, let's say, this corner sharp. So let's go to right click and go to and loop path cut. And let's add here supportive edge, and let's add here supportive edge. So when subdivided, then we have a bit more sharper edge in this area. So something like that. And so let's continue. And so far we have also this area not so smooth, actually not so sharp. It's a bit smoothed out. But before we do that, I would like to do one small incision right here in the middle as well. So let's go to loop path cut and set one edge here. Then let's go to V select and then go to loop selection, select that all over like that. And let's go ahead and do bevel with the same settings. So 2 subdivisions. So maybe something like that. And we're going to use again the same thing. So let's go to loop selection, select polygons, and let's go to right click and let's go to extrude. So when it's subdivided, that we have a bit more depth in that ridge. So now what we can do is add those supportive edges. So let's go to right click and loop path cut and add edge here. And just to position in the middle, I will hit this icon. And again here, just to position in the middle, and there we are. So when we now preview our model, this is what we should have. Okay, so as for some other details that we can do real quick. So now I can select this part right here and I can push it down and maybe a bit more. Then I can use scale function and just maybe scale it a bit like that. And then I will add supportive edges here as well. So when subdivided and hit model, we have something like this. And again, maybe we could sharpen this edge as well. So let's go to right click, loop path cut, and just position it a bit closer. So something like that. And there we are. And as for here up, we can do something similar. So let's select everything like that. And also what you can do is again, do the same thing If I click away, you can use loop selection to select everything. And again, let's hit E for move and just push it slightly up. And let's use T for scale and scale it to, let's say, something like that. And here what I like to do is extrude inner. So meaning that I will just create supportive edges up to here. And now you can go right click into extrude, but what also you can do is while holding, let's just go into live selection tool. So while hovering over one of the axes, so basically I want to extrude this under this axis. So you can hold control, and while hovering over the axis you want to extrude, you can just push it downwards. And if I solo the object, you will notice that we are creating extrusion that way. So if I now subdivide, it should look like that. But now since we have a lot of polygons connecting, actually a lot of edges connecting into one point, we will have this distortion. So to either fix that, we can delete this, or just an easy fix is to right click and let's go to extrude inner and set it like that. So it's subdivided, it will look something like this. And to even sharper this edge if you wish, again, just let's add a few supportive edges. So one here and one here, and let's do the same thing here, something like that, let's say. And there we are. So let's unsolo and let's see what else we can do. So what we can do here, for example, if you would like to add more geometry, we can go to either cylinder, and I will show you two ways how you can do that. So let's say we can now select this edge loop, and what we can do is actually split this into a new object and extrude it from there. So let's do that. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to split this geometry, actually split this selection. So if I use split, you will notice that I will have a new object right here under my subdivision surface. And if I select it, and again, Control A to select all, you'll notice that this what was selected is now actually a separate object. So what I'm going to do is leave it where it is, and I'm going to extrude it downwards. And again, you can go to right click, extrude, or simply while Control A to select all, hover over the axis where you want to extrude it, hold Control or Command, and just push it down like that. So maybe let's say something like this. And now, for example, if I would like to do more extrusions, so if I would go to right click and extrude inner, there will come to a point where this would start to overlap. So basically, if we would wish to do extrude inner in this point, we can only do it up to a certain point, to let's say here. So it's better to remove this edge and then do any adjustments that we would like, and then put that edge back. So the way we remove edges is I will go to hotkey UL for loop selection, again found V select loop selection, and I will go to right click and dissolve. So we have two variations here. So we have dissolve and we have weld. So dissolve and melt. I want to say, I'm sorry about that. So basically dissolve, let me see. So dissolve basically will remove the edges and the points, where when we have melt, let me see, it's here. Well, melt will actually remove just the edges and maintain the points where they are. So in this case, we would like to remove everything. So I'm going to dissolve this, go back and right click, extrude inner, and extrude it to, let's say, this point. And let's maybe push it a bit down, and again, extrude it down a bit and extrude inner, let's say one more time. So now I'll show you how you can dissolve edges, but also what you can do instead of that, you can also slide edges. So if I again select the edge, I can go to right click and choose slide. So basically I can just slide the edge along the surface if I wish to reposition it instead of dissolving and doing extrude inner. Also, what you can do is duplicate your current edges with clone function. So basically you would move the whole edge and create a copy. There's a hotkey for that too. So if you hold Command and Control, you can again copy that same edge. So let's again select a loop. Let's select E for Move Tool and push this a bit more down as well. And I will just go here and add supportive edges here, and add one here really close so that it's a bit sharpened up. And let's add 2 for each of the edges and 1 here. And if I solo this, we have open problem here. So to close this, let's just go right click and simply close polygon hole, and that will create one big polygon. And what we can do in this case is again right click, go to extrude inner and just close it in this way, and we can delete it because it's not shown, so it's not that important. But why we did this is simply to sharpen again this edge right here and make it more stable. So let's again right click, loop path cut, and create a loop right here. So when we subdivide that, we should have a nice smooth result. So you might notice one thing, we still have our subdivision. So when I subdivide it, the upper part it's subdivided, but the lower part it is not. So simply because subdivision surface requires to have objects either in null object, so you can either select these two, hold Alt G to group, and then it will apply for all of them. Or what you can simply do is apply the cylinder as a child of the upper cylinder, and this will maintain the hierarchy. So basically that is all that there is to that. And let's do maybe one final thing right here, because we are running out of time and I don't want to just make this super long tutorial. So let's just select this and this edges, and let's do the same thing. So right click, extrude inner, just to sharpen this up a bit. And again, what we can do to inherit subdivision surface is just push it into this cylinder. And let's put it down like that. And even though that we added an edge here, we're still missing an edge here. So let's go to loop and add an edge like that. And let's repeat the same thing here. So edge here, and we have an edge there. And what we have here, maybe it's a problem, and let's just make sure and that we optimize. Maybe just push this edge a bit closer. So like we seen before, we can simply slide it here so that it looks a bit nicer. Let's do the same thing here. And there we are. Okay, and what we can do maybe here to this cylinder, let's add a few subdivisions. And what I'd like to do is select maybe a bit more. Maybe one here and maybe one here, like that. Now what I would like to do is scale this. So if I go to scale, I can now scale this maybe like that. And let's go to right click And let's use loop path cut. Whoops. And let's just add a few edges here, and let's do the same thing at the bottom. Like that. And just to separate those two, let's add a connection. So I'm gonna select this edge loop and go again to, let's go to bevel. Something like that. And again, UL for loop selection. Select this loop and let's go and extrude it inwards. Something like that. And just create those supporting edges right in the middle. So when we subdivide, we have something like that. And what I would like to do is maybe create a ring here up as well. So let's set it to a middle. And here what we can do is select these polygons. Let's do one operation of split again. So let's split. We now have a new cylinder polygons here, and select everything. Go to right click, extrude, and I'm going to use scale. And this time I'm going to scale it on this axis like that. And now to create supportive edges, we can either go to extrude inner and extrude it like that, and add cut here and add cut here, and one here and one here. So when we subdivide, we have something like that. And just to finalize it, so let's go and solo. So right now we have an empty shell right here, and let's go to loop selection and select this outer loop right here. And what I'm going to do is right click and go to either extrude, so we can extrude this outwards, or again what we can do is close polygon hole here and here, and then just create a small ridge. So let's go to select both, right click, extrude inner, create that ridge, and then simply delete, because what we need is just a connection between those two cylinders. And I'm going to select all and select scale, just scale it up until it matches, something like that. And let's go and add loop path cut. So one cut here and one cut here. So basically this was just a small exercise on very basic modeling tools. So as you can notice, we didn't use that many functions, and we mainly focused on extrusions. So if I again right click, so we mainly focused on extrusions, beveling, extrude inner. We touched on splitting, and we also covered adding edges. We also know now that we can delete, actually dissolve edges. And yeah, we also know now that we can select loops. So if I hit V, select, we can select loop selections, ring selections, and we used basic transformation tools. So this is again just a basic exercise, basic practice on the general modeling tools. And as you can notice, you can go quite far just with these few. And I hope this tutorial was useful enough if you're just getting started. And if you have any questions regarding this video, any requests, just feel free to leave them in comments down below, and I'll try to answer all of them if I can. So again, thank you for watching, and see you next time.